Congratulations to Marv Wolfman. Your Spider-Man sucks. This is the first run to be bad, so let's give it up. This is history in the making right here. It took 15 years, but we finally did it. We got a bad one. Wolfman takes the anthology approach to Spider-Man. Each story is more or less independent, they can barely connect and can be read as you please. If you're interested in the Black Cat stories, you can read them without missing anything. I understand why Wolfman takes this approach. It does mean that every single story has to kind of be good enough to hold on its own. A run full of Night of the Prowlers, I'd be happy with that, but this is not a run full of amazing storylines. Wolfman's run is really rough. So many of the stories lack punch. Wayne's stories were lackluster too, but they usually had some good scenes that focused on supporting cast, or they had impactful endings. Conway was fantastic, Wayne was mediocre. Wolfman is just even a further step down to straight up bad. There are two different kinds of bad. Emotionally bad runs, as in, I read this and it made me angry for how badly it's written. I read this and I couldn't stop thinking about how terrible it is for the next 2 weeks. Wolfman's the other kind of bad, the boring bad. It's bad, but I don't really feel like talking about it kind of bad. It's just so ignorable. The run feels aimless, the book is spinning its wheels, accomplishing nothing. Nothing's really happening, so there's nothing to talk about. The characters are moving forward. Wayne did a little development. He did have some nice scenes between MJ and Peter where they get to shine. Wolfman doesn't even have those scenes. These scenes are drama for drama's sake. Betty suddenly leaves Ned so she can vie for Peter. Then Ned turns into a violent idiot. Why? Is this exploring some relatable themes? Not really. If it's trying to say something about escaping your emotions, it fails at it. The story doesn't show Betty and Ned's perspectives enough to do it. The characters are acting stupid just so there can be conflict. That's the point. It's contrived. There's no ending to this stuff where Betty is forced to confront what she is doing, how she's feeling. In fact, the Wolfman permanently separates Ned and Betty, confirming she's really feeling what she's really feeling. This all happens off page, of course. In order for the story to land, you need to show the characters making decisions, show, don't tell. You also should have explored why Betty is so quick to escape her troubles into these romances. Wolfman does nothing like that. You, the reader, have to assume everything makes sense. You have to imagine these stories are powerful. And when the reader has to do the work in Pulp Fiction, it's probably bad Pulp Fiction. There is a benefit in reading bad runs. If you consume nothing but good works, you will begin to kind of take good things for granted. You might not even realize you're doing it, or you might not even realize something is good because something is so obvious you never really gave it much thought. Little details that you'd never notice. The best way to understand good works is by seeing bad ones. Wolfman's run does a great job of highlighting the importance of Spider-Man's supporting cast. Wolfman doesn't use them, at all. And he does his best to separate Peter from his loved ones. And it kinda leads the book feeling very hollow. Reading Wolfman's Spider-Man feels like walking to an empty house and hearing the echoes of your footsteps. It's kinda sad. You need characters like MJ and Harry to make Peter feel right. MJ disappears after few issues, so makes no appearance for the rest of the run. You've seen her in maybe 2, 3, 4 issues in the entire thing. It's not good. Peter actually graduates doing this run. So why did Wayne say Peter can't graduate? Did a year pass in the book? In real time? The book reads like it's been months, maybe. What's going on here? It feels like a little too short. Wolfman also makes it so Peter can't graduate either, so Peter has to do summer school, which... I'm just gonna repeat myself from the Wayne video. Why? What's the point? It's I just don't get it. It just feels aimless. You're just doing this so you can have a dramatic reveal about Peter can't graduate yet. It's pointless and it's stupid. It's stupid. The worst part of the run is Wolfman's handling of the relationship drama. Peter asks MJ to marry him, and she turns him down. For some reason, Peter and MJ move on from each other in a single issue. They don't, we don't even see a proper discussion about this or anything. It's just they're just oh, okay, we're done then. And they're okay with it. It feels jarring, and more than anything, it's just intensely annoying. It's we spent years getting to this point and it's just thrown away, more or less off screen in a single page. It's just, I hate it. I will give Wolfman a little bit of credit. MJ's more or less in character during all of this. It's Peter who is more out of character, so it still sucks, but at least MJ's given a little bit of... MJ at least makes a little bit of a sense, as in the writer tried to understand the character. Betty apparently dumped Ned Leeds off screen and is now trying to get with Peter and they have a thing. It's just all so tired. Like, I don't even feel like talking about it or explaining why it's bad. It just sucks. The only point worth covering is Ned's character. Ned was introduced as the romantic rival to Peter. They competed over Betty. Ned won, obviously. Ned, during all of this, has been super cool. He's nice to Peter and Spider-Man. He's handsome, respectful, all of that. Ned's cool, alright? So he comes in and punches Peter in the face over this ordeal. Like, I kinda understand. He's emotional about getting divorced and he feels like Peter's stealing his girl. I get that, but I still feel like Ned would have been more rational about this. Like, it feels like a betrayal of everything we've seen from Ned. He's never been like this. If Ned was to change as a character, it should be shown on the page. That's a simple rule. Show, don't tell. If you want to alter a character, you should show how and why they've changed. If you skip this little beat, your take on the character doesn't feel like a story. It feels like just stuff happens. The reader won't engage with your characters because they won't believe the character's actions. And that's not the reader's fault. It just means the writer has failed to sell their take. This kind of stuff happens a lot in comics, but it is still very frustrating. Just show me why the character is changing. That's all I'm asking for. Just show me. If you don't, I will assume your run is just badly written. Because it is. This kind of writing extends to Harry and Flash too. Both begin to treat Peter worse here. They give him a hard time and it's just frustrating. Like, Harry, you were the Goblin. Peter lost Gwen. He now lost MJ. He's drowning in medical bills. You know this. I hate it. I hate it. Harry and Flash should be way past this kind of pettiness. It feels like their characters have been regressed by like a decade. It sucks. And once again, it's contrived. There's no reason for this. It's just stupid. Also, Harry's King Goblin plot is just completely dropped here. It's mentioned like once and that's it. We're just gonna pretend that's not a big deal, huh? Remember remember this guy kidnapped Flash, Aunt May, and MJ. Why is this not a bigger deal? What's the matter with you? He's the one giving Peter a hard time. What? How does that even make sense, you hypocrite? Jameson tries to make Spider-Man look like a menace and Robinson has enough and he quits. Why now? Like, Jameson has been in a hypocrite and kind of insane for years, and Robinson was cool with that before. What gives? The reason why given is that Jameson is stacking Spider-Man for not helping someone, but again, is this really the thing that made Robinson see Jameson differently? Just feels so silly. They should have been building up to this. They should have built up to this. Scenes where Jameson yells and Robinson looks at Betty and sighs and says, oh, he's growing worse. Maybe someone asks Robinson how can he support Jameson, and Robinson is like, oh, I don't even know anymore. Set it up. Jameson is growing more unhinged than ever before. The book doesn't show this. Not very well, at least. Like I said before, Jameson has been hiring supervillains for years. He does absolutely nothing to make himself worse than that. Maybe he was asking the Spider Slayer to give Spider-Man the Green Goblin special, but I don't think Robinson knows about that, so again, it doesn't really make sense. They later do explain that this is all an evil plot by Jonas Harrow. He points an experimental ray projector on Jameson's office and subjugated him to ever increase the exposures of a variator beam. Of course, I should have seen the not-so-ray coming. I guess that explains it, but you should have led with reasons. You should have shown it happening. Coming afterwards being like, actually, it made sense. It's just because you afterwards acknowledge the gun doesn't make it feel better. It's still jarring. It still kind of sucks, you know? You can't retroactively fix that. You still miss proper setups. So, what are we doing with Gloria? Conaway introduced her, and it felt like he had plans for her. Like, there's always something about her where it's like, okay, that character will probably matter in some way. Whatever he was thinking was never done. By now, she's irrelevant. There's not a single storyline about her or related to her, ever. We know nothing about her. Whatever there was supposed to be never happened, and it sucks to see. She had potential. She's cool. I would love to get to know her better, but the writers won't let me. My point with all of this is that Wolfman's take on the supporting cast, basically all of them, sucks. Not a single one of these storylines works. Not a single one of these characters are, like, honestly very likable. All except Robinson. Robinson keeps being one of the most likable characters of the entire franchise. Like, seriously, is there anyone who doesn't like this guy? What a guy. The run suffers from a weak cast of villains. They are all surface level and as boring as they come. Some? Well, really only one has meme value, like Big Wheel. He's a man in a big wheel, and then he goes around talking like this. You pushed me to the wall, mister. Now I'm pushing back. Beg, Racer, beg, and perhaps I will be merciful. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Like, that is genuinely funny. Honestly, I'm really fine with Big Wheel. Like, he's a meme, and sometimes people use him as an example of a terrible comic book villain, and he is a terrible comic book villain, but he's borders on self-aware. Like, honestly, I think the other villains are way worse during this run. Like, Big Wheel is fine. I don't have a problem with Big Wheel. There's a new villain called the Fly. He dresses up like a fly. Like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will steal this idea, and honestly, they did it so much better. They deserve to keep the character, as far as I'm concerned. The Fly is another villain created by Jameson. Jameson created a fly to defeat Spider-Man. I can't quite tell if that's meant to be funny. The joke is there, but the book doesn't quite know what to do with it. To me, that kind of means it's badly written. I feel like I'm laughing at the book. And if that's the vibe, I think it's on the creative team. I think they failed somehow. Jameson keeps hiring villains like, Jesus, Jonah. I thought he had once or twice, but he's done it like 5 times and counting. Calm down, man. Like, Jesus. What did they do to Jigsaw? Like, I'm not a big Jigsaw fan, so it doesn't really bother me too much, but man, what a fall from grace. Chameleon has a new crazy quilt looking design. It's not a good design, nor is the story very good. Spider-Man is declared not guilty for the crimes he's been wanted since Conaway days, so he has this press conference to celebrate, and he's immediately tricked into attacking an old lady, and it becomes wanted immediately. Again. That is funny. I did chuckle. Wolfman gets the point for that. Rocket Racer, White Dragon, Lightmaster. Wolfman's take on Smite feels kinda weak. I don't think Wolfman really knows how to take full advantage of such a great scenario. Like, seriously, like, Smite gives Spider-Man 24 hours to escape the trap, and it takes Spider-Man 23 hours to figure out Smite might have a way to escape. The guy who created the lock might have a key. It's dumb, like, he's literally there in the same room as Smite, and he still just decides to leave. The run is bad, the villains are bad, the cast of characters is bad, but it's not all bad. The latter half of the run improves on the first quite a bit. As the run goes on, the storylines become more well-written and more well-connected. It feels like Marvel didn't give the writers enough time to figure out their runs before putting them on. Conaway was weak until a year into his run. Wayne gets better as his run goes on, and now Wolfman. It's kind of a trend, and it continues here. Like, the second half of the run will include storylines, some standout issues, like Black Cat is introduced. Everyone's favorite Teenage Awakening is introduced in this run, and she's awesome. Her banter with Spider-Man is super fun, her action is great, and she's a proper character with real humanity, unlike all the villains like Fly. Her father is sick in prison. Her goal is to break her father out of prison so he can spend his last days at home, in comfort, before passing away. She succeeds, and then it leads to an interesting dilemma. Should Spider-Man put Hardy back into prison? She did wrong, but is there much to gain by forcing a man back in prison? It's interesting, and I don't think Spider-Man has had sympathetic villain like this yet. Black Cat is not a bad person here. She's unique, and after so many bad issues, she stands out as by far the best character of the run. Black Cat is fresh, exciting, and it's fantastic. I really like this story. Another standout is I believe immediately follows the Black Cat one, Requiem. The writing is actually good here, like all throughout. Aunt May is reported episode or something and passed away. The issue follows Peter as he comes to grips with losing his last family member. Another life added to the lives lost due to Spider-Man. Like I've said before, I don't think Peter has a guilt complex early on in the comics, but I think we're starting to see form here. He's isolated from his friends, and they've all been hating on him because of contrived writing lately. And this is a good look into Peter's more grown feelings on loss and Aunt May. Peter's thinking about how he didn't tell Aunt May he loves her enough. while he had the chance, and it kind of hits hard. Like, it's very, very relatable, very real. And you kind of start to see Spider-Man start to blame, I don't know, Spider-Man for the all the lives that have been lost. That he's starting to grow more frustrated with that part of his life. I think great portrayal of that grief. My absolute favorite scene comes from Peter later on as he goes to appear all Spider-Man No More style, and Robinson happens to be there too. And they have a little chat, and Robinson gives some guiding words to Peter. When my parents died, I thought that was it. My life was over when theirs ended. But I met my wife. I got married, had a son. And when he died, he was only 6 months old. Lord Peter, I was so absolutely certain that was it, that God had it in for me. Patrick Henry Robertson. He was so handsome. One day, he was smiling, giggling. The next. Peter, I swear, I still dream about him. But I've gone on. I had Randy, and I love him dearly, and despite everything I thought at the time, my life didn't end when Patrick died. It goes on, and we have our ups and downs, and sometimes the downs seem to stifle and crowd us until we beg for any relief. But you'll go on, and I'll go on. And I thought we don't know what's out there. We'll still plunge ahead because we got to. Because we aren't the types to shut ourselves off from the world. Peter, we're survivors. Like, seriously, if you're not gonna read Wolfman's Run, I fully encourage you, but you gotta read at least this specific monologue. It is one of the best in all of Spider-Man, and it is a really good insight to Robinson as a character. It is one of my favorite pieces of writing from the entire series. In probably the most surprising issue 200, the criminal who killed Uncle Ben is back. He kidnaps Aunt May, so Spider-Man chases him down, and we get a really angry Spider-Man here. It's a really good issue, and you should read it. I don't want to even take the chance of spoiling it if you haven't. There's a lot of emotional stuff on this list. So how about something fun? The Kingpin story. Not a lot of story to this. Kingpin kidnaps Spider-Man, and they fight. That's the issue. It's Kingpin and Spider-Man duking it out for the whole issue. It's simple, but it's really fun. It's a really good action scene. It really highlights the artist Keith Pollard's work really well, what he's good at, and I think that's action. Wolfman starts his run working with Ross Andru, but very soon Ross Andru ends his 5-year-long run. Andrew does a few issues here, and then he just dips out. They even leave a very nice little farewell message to him. Bye, Ross, and good luck. Farewell, brother. You did good. God bless your soul, underrated king. Following Andrew, the lead artist for the run would turn out to be Keith Pollard. He's fine. Pollard is my least favorite artist up to this point, but he's not bad. He's good enough. His art lacks details, especially background. I think his issues feel too simple. He does action really well, though. It's fast-paced and, I don't know really the word for it, dynamic. His characters are good, but the backgrounds are so simple, and they lack the life of Andrew. They lack the detail. Reading the run, I just kind of ended up missing my king. But it's fine. Pollard is fine. But there is an interesting quirk to Pollard's art. Peter Parker is not a crier. He's only cried twice. He cried during the origin story, and when the clone Gwen left him. He presumably cried after Green Goblin's last hand and all of that, but it's not explicitly on page, unless I'm missing something. I believe he's only cried 2 or 3 times, ever. All 3 times were extreme circumstances where he lost someone extremely important to him. It's okay for a man to cry. I love male characters who cry, but Peter Parker simply isn't a crier. He whines, he moans, but doesn't really shed tears. Peter Parker cries like 3 times during Pollard's 16-issue long run. Compare that to 2.5 times during 185 issues from before Pollard. But I am really curious to hear your thoughts on moments like these. I think the tears are out of character, but you could interpret it as Peter really going through it underneath his calmer exterior. He's lost a lot of people. He's had a lot on his shoulders with the Spider-Man stuff. He's struggling with money, and he was wanted by the law for a while. That's a lot of stress for anyone to handle, and this could be a moment of him just kind of letting it all out, even if the moment doesn't call for it. It's a realistic explanation for the moment, and it's completely plausible, but the real world answer is probably that Pollard was just new to Spider-Man and he didn't realize tears were maybe too extreme. It's probably just something he likes doing, even if it doesn't fully fit. And my question to you is, how do you interpret it? Do you see it as a mistake? Or do you take it as a revelation about Peter Parker's inner world? I think that's an interesting way, because you can go two ways about it. You can either see it as a problem or be like, okay, well, this is Peter Parker then. I don't know, just a little thought. Wolfman's run features quite a few number of guest artists. Jim Starlin, the man who created Thanos and wrote Infinity Gauntlet, shows up for an issue. He does an issue with Captain America and Electro. I like Starlin as a writer. I don't like him as an artist. John Byrne of X-Men fame, his take feels like Jack Kirby's Spider-Man. It just doesn't feel right, you know? Later there will be Al Milgrom, and Sal Buscema returns for yet another 2 issues. Buscema did a few issues for Wayne's run, and I didn't like his work there. I think a lot of it was actually almost bad. Here though, I feel like he's improved. His phases are less this. But I can take his story more serious now. His backgrounds are extremely simplified, I'd say to a fault, but his arc is better here. And I love seeing people get better at their craft. Good job, Buscema. Not my favorite, but it's cool to see the improvement. Al Milgrom is the one who did the story for Requiem, the whole story I talked about earlier. I thought he did the best out of all the artists on the run. What makes his work so great is his storytelling, composition. A lot of comic book artists, I feel like, struggle with visual storytelling, especially back in the day. They kind of, I don't know how to, like, they give you information in panels. Milgrom manages to give you emotion. Like, you have this scene where this panel of Peter mourning Aunt May, and her coffin is taking up half the panel, which is fantastic. It shows you the emotion. You can show this image to anyone in any context, and I think they would understand it. I love his choice for shots. Requiem felt better to read than any of the other issues I've read, and I think that kind of goes to Milgrom's art more than anything. I generally think he does a fantastic job. And it's one of the interesting things, it's like, returning to an earlier point, Peter doesn't even cry here. Like, Aunt May passes away, and he just broods like Peter normally does. Like, he looks miserable, but different artists, and they portrayed Peter's "oh, will the pain never stop, oh, ever woeful me" art routine, quote-unquote, correctly. Is it simply a change in artist, or did the character get it out of his system earlier so he has no tears left to shed? The one thing that I think got better on this run are the covers. Those covers, don't like them. These covers, now this is what I like. You know me, I appreciate a good cover. The most interesting thing about the run comes right after Wolfman actually finishes his thing and leaves. The next run is by Denny O'Neil, the guy who's your favorite Batman writer's favorite Batman writer. But before O'Neil takes over Spider-Man, there are 2 issues that bridges these 2 runs. One issue is written by David Michelini, and the other one by Roger Stern. Both of them would go on to write full Spider-Man runs on their own. These 2 issues are kind of a preview of what's to come, and yeah, both the issues are better than almost everything in Wolfman's run. Michelini makes quite an impression with his Black the Cat story. I love the way he writes, I love the way Spider-Man talks, I love the way he writes his ending. It's euphoric. Stern writes the second story, closing out Jonas Harrow's plotline. It's very anticlimactic, to be honest, like all that build up for such a mundane confrontation. I expected more. I was a little disappointed, but make no mistake, I still really like the issue. It's a great issue. Absolutely gets it, a Spider-Man down well. These 2 managed to make Peter feel that relatable everyman again. They don't overdo it, the drama, and the plots feel more believable than they do in Wolfman's hands. They feel more interesting. I was far more invested in them. The 70s were a little shaky for Amazing Spider-Man, but it does seem that 80s might turn out to be much better.